And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with Y from On the Cusp of Tarot, Lucy from Lucy AcquaLuna, and Anneke from Nobody Here 2020. Uh, we got a fun topic to talk about today. I think a lot of people kind of misconstrue what cultural appropriation is and kind of doesn't necessarily take it seriously, just to dive into what the topic's about. And the impact that it can have and how it can change the whole entire worldview of a certain symbol or representation of something or someone. So we're not going to talk about it so broadly. I know I'm going to leave that to right there, Anneke, to kind of talk about the bigger picture things here. Meanwhile, me, Y, and Lucy are going to be talking about specific decks, specific examples that we have of decks that, do cultural appropriation, and decks that, actually have good, correct, if you will, cultural representation. There's something that we're not going to talk about. Oh, right. Me and Lucy are going to be focusing on decks that represent or attempt to represent or appropriate Mexican or Latino culture. Meanwhile, Y and Anneke are going to be focusing on Asian, their Asian culture and heritage being represented or appropriated in decks, yeah, in decks. So where to begin? Where do we start? Let me I'm gonna let Anneke start off and start of like the bigger picture thing here, and then we'll show how that goes on into decks and into the smaller scale things, right?
Okay, I am not prepared for this. So what I'm saying here is just things I've been thinking about. This disclaimer, this is not a seminar. I am not here to lecture. So I haven't prepared, I haven't read materials. I can't quote you primary sources. This is just casual chat amongst four friends, and you are coming for the ride. So the four of us were talking about stuff, and we ended up talking about cultural appropriation. And I have spoken about this a few times where I was alarmed at the simplistic take on the term cultural appropriation, where everything that is adopted by a different cultural group constitute appropriation. And what I'm saying is that on the whole, the implication of such simplistic and big brushstroke application of the term appropriation is quite dangerous because it can result in segregation. So if somebody looked like me and somebody looked like Y, and somebody decided that people who look like me and like Y are a certain kind of people, and let's say Y is wearing a Chinese costume, and if I'm wearing a Chinese costume, I'll get away with it because of the way I look. And the thing is, my own cultural heritage is actually not that costume. I have the Peranakan culture, the batik, the kabaya, that's my heritage. But I would get away with it because of the color of my skin, and I kind of argue that that is kind of racism in a way when you are pegged based on your skin color as to what clothing or what ritual or what cultural artifact or what cultural marker you should have based on your skin color rather than based on your actual cultural heritage. And so but that's a big topic because we ended up talking about diversity, we're talking about representation, we ended up talking about stereotyping, we ended up talking about a cultural assimilation, we ended up talking about cultural evolution, cultural appreciation, cultural adoption, before we can even talk about appropriation. So that's too big a topic, I think. And so I'm thinking that that's why we're going to talk about deck specific as a concrete example. And I don't have any example to bring to the table, although I have my opinion about, say, the Kuan Yin Oracle, which is quite different from, interestingly, Y's opinion of the Kuan Yin Oracle, even though Y is the person who has a direct experience with the spiritual path, which involves the goddess Kuan Yin, and I don't. My grandparents are involved with Kuan Yin on a spiritual level, but I grew up Roman Catholic. So yeah, so I will just weave in and out. It's not possible to talk about it in its entirety in 1 hour. It's just not possible. So I'll just weave in and out while these guys are sharing their thoughts about a few decks that could be argued as being a little bit appropriative or a lot.
Since she brought up the infamous Kuan Yin Oracle, let's start it off with this one, because I think while personally if we start small, then we can kind of go to the bigger route, right? So Anneke kind of sums it up how we decided to choose, talk about this subject matter, and we really try to like streamline it so that it's more digestible. She mentioned in the private chat that we four have, and that was the first one that kind of brought into the discussion, and she said that, did you like it? And surprisingly, yes, I like it. Oh, what? No, you did not say that. Unsubscribe, old traitor, you YM. Oh, wow, I'm sipping, the Buddha cup.
Cancelled.
Cancel, YM, no more on the cusp. The reason I like it, this is the way that I explain it. Yes, I understand. I completely understand. And Anneke is going to bring out her point of view on this deck. It is created by a this book is written by a Western woman, I would say. I don't want to say white woman because I don't know her heritage, right? So a Western woman from the name, right? From a Western woman. And the book has some prayer, meditation in it. Right here, you see there's a prayer of yada, yada, yada. And the imagery of the cards, some of them black. Oh, are we back?
I think so. Was that
And
on
Anneke is gone.
It
It was like
It
a
froze for a
blackout
second.
for a hot second,
Right.
and then Anneke is gone.
Yeah.
Are you on Wi-Fi?
Oh my goodness.
Don't use Wi-Fi.
It does fine for the most part. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's probably my bad. I really do need to get
She's
into
Australian.
cable.
Sorry, wait.
The power of Kuan Yin is too much. The discussion of Kuan Yin is too much. But anyway, before the blackout, we're back. I was talking about imagery. Some of the imagery of the card I really connected with, like this one. Like I grew up with it. I saw this this version of Kuan Yin, and like this one, I saw this one also, and some of the very traditional looking ones are, I'm like, yes, I want this deck. But then some of the imagery of, like, these are the good ones. And then some of the imagery is a little bit provocative. There's nudity in it. There's a little bit of sensuality, in it. And there's a lot of argument saying that, no, Kuan Yin is not that. How dare you? That's not a right representation of Kuan Yin. But then there's some of them that are quite beautiful, in my opinion. Like I actually see, like some of these are a little problematic in a way, right? But I decided that I like this deck because for me personally, I am able to work with it. Because this is the important part. Because I have a personal connection with this goddess. I have a personal connection with Kuan Yin. My mother have taught me the story of Kuan Yin and kind of did a ceremony, and she is basically my fairy godmother. So from the very young age, I already feel spiritually connected to her, right? So looking at this, do I see the true Kuan Yin from the picture? No. Do I appreciate the reminiscence of the imagery that it evoked me to stay connect with her? Yes. So then, out of all the decks out there, there's not much Kuan Yin deck. It's basically one or two. I think there's two. There's the Wild Kuan Yin and this one, right? And it's a slim picking. So do I not work with this deck because some of the imagery and some of the prayers and this whole structure is not correct, quote unquote? And then yes, the prayer is a little washed, if that's the right word. Like I have to physically translate and then try, into Chinese or whatever that I usually did the prayer with her and kind of remind me of that, right? So it works for me. So the question I have is, or the question that I brought into the chat is, right? It works for me because I have a personal connection. I have a history that, personally with Guan Yin, and it works for me, even though some of the depiction of the picture is completely off-putting in a way, right? So if this goes to someone that does not know Guan Yin at all, right? Does not know this culture at all, what would that impact? Can they claim, or can they kind of have the idea like, oh, I work with this deck, yes, I now have a personal connection with Guan Yin and I'm the expert of Guan Yin, like, yes, based on this deck. If someone work with this deck and actually talk to me and carry on a conversation like, oh girl, I know Guan Yin because I studied with this deck, would that be a problem? Would that be now, if that leads into, seems like a bigger issue, right? So is that appropriation? Would that be a problematic thing? That's where we're at right now.
Oops, sorry. Okay, I'll go ahead. I think my personal take on that is, if it's your starting point, like me as a non-Asian, if I see that deck or any deck that is not part of my culture, and it's just like the starting point, and that is triggering something in me to, well, maybe triggering is not a good word, but like it sparks something in me, and it makes me want to dive into it, to really submerge myself into that culture, into that knowledge, into that part of someone else's culture. I think it's not so bad, but I think what I have a problem with is like with cultural appropriation, it's like this is a person who is choosing to depict a culture that it's not their own, which is fine. It's fine in my book as long as they know it and they are passionate about it and they love it. So if you can somehow communicate that to me, I'm okay. But it's also sometimes it feels just like, taking something that is quote unquote popular and just trying to make a quick buck out of it. That to me feels very wrong. Now that's when I struggle with cultural appropriation, like me personally. So I don't know Alana for a child. Like I personally don't like the deck, but that's just me. It's nothing against Alana or Kuan Yin. It's just a personal preference, and I don't feel like, because it's not my culture, I don't feel like, is it cultural appropriation? Is it not? How do I feel about it? So that's where I struggle.
See, the thing is, it's not like Gaviota, our speaker just now, apologized for painting Yin, I think. And that was my point initially. The adoption of a cultural artifact of somebody else's cultural group by another cultural group is not a sufficient definition of appropriation. There's a lot of conditions and aspects that constitute appropriation, because if there's simply the cultural adoption by another, the cultural adoption of one cultural group by another, then we're in trouble, because we'll be entering the territory of cultural segregation and segregation, God knows what else. For example, I believe Buddhism was initially not Chinese, it's Indian. Let me rephrase. It came from the land that now we know as India. India, as a country, India as a cultural group, it's a bit like China being, a nation as Chinese being ethnicities, and it's kind of so. Excuse me. So that came from India to China and to the rest of the world. Or we're going to say it's appropriation because it doesn't quite work that way. For me personally, it just, especially we all grew up multicultural, you could see how dangerous it can be as soon as you enter segregation. So then what qualifies as appropriation? And a lot of us, I think, feel something is appropriative, but we can't seem to qualify it. And I've been trying, this is why I haven't spoken about it, because I've been struggling to qualify it. What is this sense of invasion, this sense of being overtaken? It's like there's one symbol which I'm not going to name, okay, because the most blatant case of cultural appropriation, of symbolic appropriation. And I don't want this channel to be banned or demonetized. So I'm asking you not to use the word as well. The word started with S, and it is associated with a group of people in Germany during World War II, and it has something to do with the appearance of one's skin, okay? You know what that symbol is. That symbol is actually still being used now by people who, I believe, Buddhist, I think, I don't know, I can't speak for Hinduism. I think it's in Hinduism as well, I don't know, but it's Sanskrit. It has a Sanskrit root to the word. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hinduism has that, uses the symbol as well. And I think Buddhism is somehow an offshoot of Hinduism. And so I wouldn't be surprised if both, but I'm familiar with Buddhist friends using the symbol. I haven't seen my Hindu friends using the symbol yet, but I know that in some photos of Hindu temples in India, I've seen that somewhere. And if you know what I'm talking about, the fact that we can't even say the word now because we're afraid of being banned by YouTube. And yet the symbol is supposed to be spiritual. Now that is the essence of appropriation to me. So it's not just an adoption of culture. It's not just an assimilation of culture. It can't be. It has to be something else. And I'm just not sure what that is. A power dynamic certainly plays into a part. And with regards to Kuan Yin Oracle, for example, those images are produced by Chinese artists. Is that sufficient to say it's not appropriation? Are we being racist if we say, oh, it's produced by a Chinese artist, so it's okay? Race, our color, surely cannot be the defining element of cultural appropriation. Otherwise, we're venturing into a whole other kind of racism. And so he is a Chinese artist, but what I know of his work that has been used by the Kuan Yin Oracle is that those are depiction of Tang Dynasty women. And Tang Dynasty is one of the height of Chinese culture, the height of poetry. It was the centuries of peace, and the women are sensual, and everybody's enjoying themselves. And so then the question is, what is wrong with depicting Kuan Yin as a sensual, physical woman? I can't answer that because I don't know Kuan Yin. All I know is that before she was a female, she was a male, right? Why? Yeah.
That's exactly it. Because that's one of the argument. You see, Kuan Yin is she transformed in many forms. Women, man, old women, young women, beautiful woman, ugly woman. She transformed all form, right? So when I see this picture, I'm like, oh, of course, it's just she transformed to a sensual woman whatsoever, right? But then, because I understand that, that's the thing. I understand that. does she needs to write specifically? Does she needs to have someone write in the book and say, hi, this is why? It doesn't say in the book, right? Then where is that line lie?
Did she say that she comes in many form, that the sensual woman is but one of her form? Did she get into depth about who Kuan Yin is, as far as you understand Kuan Yin? And I think that's the second element. The second element is what Lucy touched, I think, on a qualitative way, which is the superficial take of something. Like the symbol that's been used by that people, you know, group of people in Germany during World War II, or just leading to World War II, really.
Well, I feel like they just took the symbol, like I said, they took the symbol and what it means, but they stripped everything away from it. Because I've said this in our message, that in its translation, to quote Wikipedia, I'm not sure how 100% accurate this is that word, the symbol is conducive to well-being. So that group of people from Germany considered themselves to be conducive to well-being. If they were not a part of them, they were not conducive to well-being. And that is how they twisted that symbol and used it. I think that's my theory. So so they didn't just take the symbol because it looked cool and they used that as an aesthetic. They knew its meaning, but they stripped everything away from it. They stripped all the spirituality from it, and they stripped only their basic definition of what it is, and they used it, and now it means something completely different in the Western culture.
So then the question, bring it back to the Kuan Yin Oracle, has Kuan Yin in some way been stripped away in that oracle? It hasn't, for why? Because why know the whole of Kuan Yin? Why knows Kuan Yin well? So he comes into this as someone who knows and say, yeah, it's okay. I'm gonna overlook that. And the other element that I want to highlight before I forget, which is a function of power dynamic, I think, is the fact that Y said, as a devotee of Kuan Yin for, I don't know what, 3 generations, 4, 5 generations, you said, I have no choice. You know, the only way for you to get this done is by somebody in Australia whose heritage is completely different, and who, I don't know how long she's been communing with Kuan Yin. I have no idea. I can't say. But that's irrelevant to the point that I have no choice. This is all there is about the Kuan Yin Oracle. Because in our tradition, well, in the tradition of Kuan Yin that Y is still practicing and that my grandparents practiced, but that my family no longer practice, we don't work with cards, do we? This whole card thing is a Western artifact. So of course, when we're trying to move Kuan Yin into cartomancy that is essentially rooted in Western esotericism, you get Western people doing Kuan Yin. So for us, it's like, okay, we know, we look, you know, but then the question goes back to, how about those people who never know Kuan Yin before? Has Kuan Yin been stripped away? And then the question then become, is it okay to strip it away? Because in evolution and assimilation and changes that happens in the world all the time, the nature of things changes all the time anyway. But then where do you draw the line between assimilation and evolution and adoption and appreciation? The changes that is acceptable to contribute to those things, and changes that's not acceptable that contributes to quote unquote appropriation. Is it one which is degenerative in nature? But if that is the case, who is to set the standard for what is degeneration? Going back, I don't know.
I mean, that's exactly where the thin line is, right? Like, does it strip away the representation of Kuan Yin? I don't think so, because because the idea of Kuan Yin is many faces, right? But then, what is it misinterpreted? That's possible, you know what I'm saying? Like, completely strip away, I don't think so. Not like the symbol, right? Because it's not, oh, Kuan Yin is like sex object. It's like, it's all essential. It's not that, right? But then the representation, is it there though? Yes and no, right? But this is the other thing that I'm kind of like interested about, right? So with all these things she wrote, and she's like, you know, I'm doing this mantra and I'm doing this prayer, and I really want to know, how did she come up with this mantra, and how did she come up with, and why did she want to create this oracle, right? Did she really went through the study of Kuan Yin and actually understand the prayer? Or like, just say reverse, right? So I have my own prayer, Chinese prayer, and I have this, you know, every day I do whatever, right? So if I use that prayer, and then, you know what, I'm going to say, I'm very interested in Catholic Church. I am very interested in Jesus. And I'm going to create a deck. And I'm going to translate my personal prayer into this deck and kind of twist it and word it. And then I'm going to put it out there. What would that do, right? And then I honestly don't, like, because I see the prayer, I'm like, yes, it's a nice way to kind of, you know, meditate and all, and center your thought, and then, you know, positive reinforcement and all those good stuff, right? Like, how much of it is credible? And then, and by all means, it is helping people. I'm sure it is helping people, because this is not too extreme saying that, you know, this prayer is going to destroy people. This mantra is going to be like, you know, it's a positive reinforcement of Zen living and meditation and all this goodness, right? And then that's where I'm like, where do I draw the line? Like, no, this is bad. This is appropriation. I hate it. Or like, no, it serves a purpose. It does serve some kind of purpose, right? People are not like, read this book and go shoot people.
Yes, I think it's a very fine line. And I don't think, and I don't mean to speak for any of us, but I don't think we're trying to say like, oh, this is a good deck, this is a bad deck, this is totally cultural appropriation, this is totally not. I think we're just here to open the conversation, to reflect on this, to pose the questions, and just to present this to people watching, and to reflect among ourselves as well. Like to look, and to reflect further into this. And also to further develop the idea that you were commenting, why I think with cultural appropriation there is also a power play. This is not my original idea. I saw it in someone else's channel, which I don't remember the name, but it was about Disney movies, and the cultural appropriation that those can represent over the years. And there was a note from this person about cultural appropriation taking like a key aspect is for like colonialism or like the power play. So she was presenting an example of India, making a movie that was totally appropriating, quote unquote, the American style. So it was Indian actors, Indian people doing Bollywood dances, with, I mean, the clothes were like a mixture, but you would like, I didn't see the movie, just the clip for that. And I'm not sure if it was making fun, of the American culture or actually trying to represent it. And the question is that cultural appropriation? What you were saying, why no? What if I, being Asian, create a deck about Catholicism or Christianism? And it seems, I mean, there's also like define like the dominant culture is the one that can do the cultural appropriation. I'm not sure. I'm very like fair play and to be fair to everyone, but I'm still like, well, yes, obviously there's a power play. No, there's white supremacy, there's white privilege, so we cannot like not see that. So I'm just still like thinking, no, and
Yeah, I think
reflecting like, is that.
I'm gonna. Thanks for bringing that up, Lucy, because I think the power dynamic has to be, instead of race, right? Instead of color of our skin, power dynamic has to play a part, a central part in appropriation or definition of appropriation. If those on top and at the bottom happen to be a certain color of the skin, that's a different story. You know, it's a bit like there was a study, somebody said that a lot of people who drink a lot of coffee apparently have shorter life expectancy. And so my argument was that the coffee, the coffee is not the issue with short life expectancy. People who drink coffee lead a lifestyle. People who drink coffee tend to lead a lifestyle, which is directly linked to a life expectancy. Do you know what I mean? So the power play or the power dynamic is certainly central. As so happen, people for what in our age now, this is my thinking, right? People with darker skin are somehow not as powerful as people with lighter skin. For whatever reason, this is the case in our age now. And so, sure, if that's the case, sure. But I think let's be clear that the power dynamic is really what's like, okay, let's go back to the Kuan Yin Oracle. I'm going to give you some context. I had the Mother Mary Oracle by the same author, by the same publisher. And when I look through the Wild Kuan Yin, I have that as well. I'm actually just operating. And I look through the book. The book's the same. The book's the same. The meditation, the compassion, the voice of the prayer, the serenity, the calmness of it, the comfort of it is the same. Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, you know, it's the same. But in my family, I have both Kuan Yin and Mother Mary. And I can tell you that they're not the same. Their compassion is the same. Their role in our lives is the same. Archetypically, they're the same, you know, this mother archetype, right? But they're not the same. So from the cultural actress point of view, although Kuan Yin for me is indirect. So for me, in that sense, going back to what Y said, what choice do I have? And that suggests to me, what choice do I have? Those words suggest to me there's power dynamic at play, and that we have to go to someone of European heritage. That in itself is not necessarily an issue. I just don't know how long she knows Mary or Kuan Yin. And I just don't know how much of Mary and how much Kuan Yin is in those decks, and how much of it is her.
And I think that's where we always kind of, as a consumer, like I'm sure any of you in the chat or who is watching right now, as a consumer, where we kind of like, ooh, should we buy this deck? Ooh, is that like it's actually the responsibility is somewhat lying on us, right? To see where is it appropriation or not appropriation, right? But and then at the same time, it's like, well, then I can just blame, well, why don't you make a deck, Anneke? Why don't you make a Kuan Yin deck? Why? Well, sure, like, you know, like, I don't know. Like, then you kind of like put into the narrative of like, she is providing something. I mean, but then she's making money though. She's making a lot of money, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with making money. First of all, there's nothing wrong with the color of her skin. There's nothing wrong with her heritage. I don't know enough about her. I'm only saying what I see from my perspective. So I expect the fact that they are using the tool of Western esotericism, I think, or what initially started off as one. Okay, right now it's something else. I don't know, a new age maybe. And that's also a movement, a spiritual movement centered around where, I don't know, the US, was it the US, Europe, somewhere. So in a way, it's a bit like we're playing on somebody else's playground, and then we're looking for an element of our culture in somebody else's playground. Of course, it's going to be filtered through, So it's a bit like, it's a bit like if I am the king of fruit salad, and then I happen to visit Zach's house, and then I wanted my fruit salad. Well, no, I'm going to get his fruit salad because he's hosting. Do you know what I mean? And so.
Which is a good point where we leads to, in a way, like, so then, of course I don't need this to have a personal connection with Kuan Yin, right? I don't need this to actually do a daily prayer. It's a good reminder, it's a tool, right? So when it comes to that aspect, so I am going, I really want to know hoodoo, and I want to get that hoodoo tarot and kind of do some research. I really want to do any of the Mexican, that sounds horrible, Latino, Latinx stacks, like any of the Mexican culture, right? Oh, should I do Santa? I can't say the word Santa
Muerte.
Yeah, Santa Muerte. Oh yes, I know that because it's broadcast everywhere. Should I buy it? Should I work with it? And once I work with it, I know that culture, right? That will be a huge problem, right? So let's push that conversation over to the other side.
I was gonna say, I'm like, yeah, Panda Express is not Chinese food.
Girl.
I'm like, Taco Bell? Well,
Not Mexican.
Not actual Mexican food, though. It's. Oh, girl, where do we go? Where do we go from this? Where do we go from this? Where do I go from this? So.
To the Mexican decks. Or
Okay,
Mexican or Latin decks.
Okay, so let me go with one example. Okay, one that's been like rolling in my mind, and I finally got understood and put it into words why it bothers me, and why it's and So, get that out of my face. Oh my gosh.
Now I'm unsubscribing. Why?
Cancel him. He's canceled. I'm just kidding. So El Goliath. Okay. So the pronoun. No. What is that? Give me the grammar. Lucy.
Article.
Article?
It's an article. Yeah.
Article. Girl. The article L. Okay, it's used as the. So a lot of people don't. I'm not sure his intentions of it. I'm not even going to waste my time asking him because I'm not sure I'll get a direct answer from him. He'll probably just say, that's just the artist's intention. So to me, he used the word L to make it sound different, to make it sound special and unique and exotic. Okay. But what happens is that people then start saying the El Goliath Tarot. What they're literally saying is the Goliath Tarot. You sound like clowns. Okay. So even I've said it though, the El Goliath Tarot, because El and Goliath have like kind of stuck together as its title, but it's really just El Goliath Tarot. And you go through each of the cards and it says L, Eight of Swords or whatever, L this and that, and the grammar, close enough. L is the masculine article, where La would be the feminine. So you can't really. This is where the appropriation comes in. He took a word that sounded different and unique and special, and he put it in his title. And whether he is Hispanic or Latino, and whether he has that heritage or not, I don't know. So far, he doesn't look like he's done his research from what we've seen in the guidebook and what we've seen online. But the use of L, though, now I completely forgot what I was going to say about it. It's okay. Here it is. I know, but I need to get this out. I finally figured it out. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading the private chat here. Sorry, everyone. So in America, okay, and this is an experience very unique to America. Okay, we have this nationalism here that says you have to know English. You cannot speak Spanish. if you want to understand this struggle and this plight, read the book Burro Genius. Okay, I think his name is Villaseñor. I think that's his name. I'll put a link in the comments or in the description down below after this. It's an amazing book that shows what it was like being a Mexican child going through the American education system. Okay, I wasn't. Luckily, I was able to learn English, and we had a program, that allowed me to learn English and Spanish at the same time until I finally went full on English. But
I forgot about the Spanish. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So through that, he was like essentially like bullied and oppressed for speaking Spanish. And people still are today. People will be talking in Spanish, and then someone will walk by and be like, "We're in America, speak English." And then this guy comes out with this deck and uses the name El Goliath and uses the word El, just like that. There it's exotic, there it's different. So again, I don't know his actual heritage, but again, it's like it shows like a lot of white people and American people using the deck. There's a plenty of cards though as well in that deck of the moon baby. That is Hebrew. That is the Hebrew way of saying of God. That's one of the very many names of God in the Kabbalistic Hebrew name. Not the same thing. Mary L uses this. Mary L says it right. She says Mary L, Mary of God, essentially. And that's why all the names, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, all have the name El at the end because they come from God. Not the same as El Goliath. Not the same at all. Because he's using it as the Spanish. So no. Whether or not he again and again, it's like, which was it? Either way, both kind of fall into appropriation. I study Kabbalah and all that. A lot of these books, this right here, this is Jewish cultural appropriation right here. But I know that. I know that this isn't the true Kabbalah. I know that this isn't going to lead me to and make me a true Kabbalist. This is Hermetic Golden Dawn Kabbalah, appropriated from the Jewish tradition. But I'm getting off topic. That's for another day.
Yeah, two quick notes on that. Just for El Goliath, like we have the Mexican or the Latin or even Native American, like connotations that are like all over the deck. But also the Arabic font, which, okay, it was removed for the second edition, and I'm glad for that. But it was also there. So there were a lot of red flags with that deck, just to say that. And the other thing that you mentioned, like the Spanish, how it's forced, to learn English. I want to add, like, not only English, but quote unquote, a neutral accent English. Because we've seen that other cultures have different accents, or the Black community has a different accent, and it's also that English is also discriminated. So yeah, the struggle is real. Just saying those.
Yeah. So Santa Muerte. Let's talk about the deck that I wanted to talk. I know El Goliath just was out there, but it's one of the good ones. It's one of the good examples of it, in my opinion, because now I finally figured out how to explain why El is problematic. But Santa Muerte, that one too. So Santa Muerte, one of the issues that I had with it is, first of all, the creator's Italian. The publisher is Italian. I'm not sure whether or not that the creator has been to Mexico and has stayed time there. Even then, the creator would have done more with the deck had he experienced more of the Mexican culture. He wouldn't have limited it to just mariachi costumes, ponchos, Dia de los Muertos, and one depiction of Santa Muerte. Oh, and a luchador. He would have done more than that. There's a thing in films when you look at Mexico in real world, it's like you have the blue skies and the air, and it looks normal. In films, when they show Mexico, they depict it in a sepia yellowish tone for some reason. Always, a lot of movies they do that. It's kind of like that, we're more than that deck, and a lot of people love the Santa Muerte, so it. But to me, I just see it, and it's like very little representation of Mexican culture is in tarot, and this is the best we get so far.
Yes, I wanna quote. This is Llewellyn, so directly from Llewellyn and Los Carabeo. It says, since 1987, our publisher Los Carabeo has published over 100 tarot decks that have been acclaimed all over the world for originality and quality. Only the best Italian and international artists are selected for our new decks. And the result is that Los Carabeo decks are all recognizable as an exceptional artistic value. This is what it says on Fabio Listrani's about. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't tell me a lot about the author. We can Google him and see that he has a lot of decks. I'm not talking against this person or his art. That's his art, and I'm sure it's very beautiful and a lot of people like it. We're talking about the Santa Muerte deck and the depiction of a culture that is very known to Zach and I, because I live in Mexico City. I live and breathe Mexican culture and Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead. And I have two main issues with this deck. One is a name, Santa Muerte. Okay. And I think I've said it 2 times, and I'm not going to say it again. That is a goddess that has a lot of loaded connotations.
She's not really a goddess, though, right?
Well, I'm going to say a deity.
Yeah.
A deity that has a lot of deep connotation and a lot of associations that are heavy-handed in Mexico. So you don't not, at least from what I see from my friends, from witches, from my circles, no one goes lightly talking about this deity. It's not like, oh yeah, you're having a quick coffee and talking about this deity. No, it's very respected, and it's very serious, and it's very deep. And the deck to me feels like a mockery of that. And sure, some of the depictions are fun, and I'm all about that, because I love that Mexico has a way to make fun of the death, and it's just like a party, like a big celebration. And I love that about the Day of the Dead culture. But it's fun. It's not fun in, making fun at someone else, but all of us having fun together. That difference. And I think Y could attest to that, no? It's very, very different to make fun of someone than to be having fun with someone. And I don't feel like that deck is having fun with me, but more that it's making fun of me. That's my issue. And I don't want to close on a sour note, so I had that from Santa Muerte. And I think I want to talk, I had other decks, but just to mention one, because as Zach said, it seems like we don't have a lot of options. So this has been very, I think, close to our hearts, and we're just waiting for it so much. The Corazon Mexica tarot. This is by, or his handle name is Chicome. It's Quintly. It's even a little hard for me to say it. But he's a Chicano artist. He's living in Mexico City. I don't know him, but just by the very few posts, I can tell that he lives and breathes the culture. You can tell he has 3 small books talking about the culture, explaining the symbolism. You can see I'm going to link his Etsy page, and you can read the description for the paintings, the description for the tarot cards that he has so far. And it's just so much detailed and rich, and you can say oh yes, that totally makes sense. I know this. And even for me, it's oh, I didn't know that. And I can check with other sources, and it's just so well researched. And he's a white person, which goes to Anneke's point. This is not about skin tone or skin color. He's white, and he's doing an awesome representation of the Mexican culture, which excites me and makes me very, very passionate about. So that's when I think we crave now for representation and for more diversity in the tarot creators.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's one of the things. Anneke is talking about this. When we talk about diversity too, we have to remember not just showing people of color and people of different cultures and backgrounds and body types in decks. It's supporting those creators, supporting those actual creators and deck creators. That's one of the things. And when it comes to representation and the Santa Muerte, it kind of fails for me because it just shows skeletons, which is a wonderful idea. It's like, in the end, we're all bones. When we die, we all become bones. But in terms of representation, it's like we barely have any Mexicans or, Hispanics or Latinos in being represented in tarot. But when we do get a thing of our culture, it's just bones. They're dead. She's dead. That's another thing right there, which is like, yeah, it's aesthetically cool looking, but it's like, it's more than just an aesthetic. So yeah.
It's more than just aesthetic. I think that's where it is, right? And so it goes back to, are we just being and my mind is branched out to so many things now, like diversity in decks that we keep talking about. We have no choice, because who is doing a Kuan Yin Oracle deck who is a devotee of Kuan Yin? Who is doing a Mexican who is actually steeped in Mexican culture? And when people talk about, so now we're going into diversity, this is what I mean, right? We cannot talk about appropriation without talking about all this other stuff: representation, diversity, the power dynamics, the reality of the power dynamics, culture proxy to skin color as culture to proxy, whether skin color should be a proxy to culture. But now I'm losing my train of thoughts. Shoot, what was I gonna say? But it's like the creator of Corazon Mexica, isn't he half? I know the appearance is white, quote unquote.
He's half. He's half Mexican, half Spanish, I think, right? He's half European, half Mexican. So he's white presenting. He was born, I think, in the U.S. I think he was born in Missouri, somewhere around there. But he moved at a young age to Mexico, and he's been.
If he identifies as Chicano, then he definitely was born in the U.S.
Yeah, I think yeah. So born in the U.S. I think he was like, I don't know. He tells the story a lot on his Instagram. I highly recommend that if either Anneke or Lucy or White can post the link to his Instagram there in the chat. That would be like, there he explains a lot. Also his Patreon. Support him on Patreon. Again, this is supporting diversity in decks, and in art as well. And yeah, he's white looking, and it's like a lot of people still talk to him and comment and be like, I don't know how I feel seeing a white person wear this regalia, wear these things, wear this stuff, but it's like, well, they obviously don't know that he's that he grew up in Mexico, and it's like, I can't say the same to him. If I were that person, it'd kind of be a little bit hypocritical, because I barely know shit about that culture. And I'm Mexican, it's like, so I barely know anything about that. So it's like, I really can't. So he's doing more work than even I can, So even if I was like, I'm Mexican, I have the right to make an Aztec Mexica themed tarot or oracle deck. It's like, no, it'll also be considered cultural appropriation, because I'm misinformed on these deities and these practices and these rituals and all that, and I'll end up just clowning myself.
I would disagree that, let's say I don't think we can say appropriating. See, that the narrative changes when you try to understand your own culture, it's you attempting to understand your own culture. The fact that you're going to be doing a half-assed job at it is a completely different conversation. But I don't think people are going to say, oh, Zach is culturally appropriating. No, Zach is trying to understand the culture of his ancestors, and he is still on his way to understanding. It's a bit like if I created a Kuan Yin tarot or oracle cards.
True.
I wouldn't know
I would,
but I can get away with marketing my face. This is the reality of it. I gotta understand it, because we are living in a racist world. They look at my face and they say, yeah, she's all right. I won't be all right, because I wouldn't have a clue what I'm talking about, because I don't know anything about Kuan Yin other than the stories that my mom told about my grandparents, who's long since passed. So I don't think we're going to be trying to answer questions here. It's probably more asking the questions at the moment, aren't we? And I'm just wondering, you say something about the Sultan Tarot, which I have. So I'm quite keen to know what you guys think about it.
Sultan, that's one I haven't researched too much into it, but it's like if you have the guidebook, I think you'll be able to see it. It's like whether it's just generic tarot meanings in the cards, and it's just just the aesthetic of the Sultan. But I want to say we looked into it and that he did have cultural backgrounds within it, but he is in New Zealand and from New Zealand, the creator of the Sultan, right?
I think there is a huge book that was written by a New Zealander, but the tarot itself was created by somebody else or something like that. A huge, thick book. I have it as well, but it's in storage.
I have the information on that. So the tarot deck was created by Peter Balin. Where are my links? Yes, Peter Balin. And then the book was created by, Michael Owen. So I think both are New Zealanders. And I also had this as an example because, so the Sultan deck was created in 1976, and it says here in the sultan.com page, it was the first of non-Western or indigenous tarot decks. I think, yeah, we're going to test that if it was 1976. And he actually talks about, so I was researching now, and he talks about actually taking a trip to Mexico. I don't know how long he was here. So he talks about not knowing about tarot and not knowing about like the archetypes and all. So it seems that it came progressively to him, and it was, I don't know if it like synchronicity moment or what was it, no? But he started to creating the tarot and decided to do based on Mexico. But just the fact that he says like I traveled to Mexico, that to me shows like, even though he's from New Zealand, that to me shows like a genuine interest in knowing more about the culture and accurately depicting it. And this is back in the 70s. So for sure, again, we touch on the white privilege, and this is like, he is the one that maybe has the ability to do so. But I'm not, I don't feel like offended as in Santa Muerte by Sultan. Again, Sultan is not one of my favorite decks. I have like a few issues with it, but I appreciate the work that went into it, and that there was an exposure and a representation of the Mayan culture in particular. I think it goes beyond Mexican. Let's say it like it's Mayan, because that involves more countries than just Mexico. And that made me smile. Like, yeah, here is someone that is trying to do their research and really fall in love with the culture and really try to depict it and expose it to the world. So that to me is like, yeah, please go for it.
Hector said,
and he brings up another point. It's like I have a point. Why would I make an Aztec deck if my Mexican lineage isn't Nahuatl, right? Is that how you pronounce that? Mexico isn't an ethnic monolith either. And that's true. That's one thing we didn't really specify here. That this is why I'm like, it's difficult to put this in an hour, but it's like, yeah, Mexico it isn't like America. Or, girl, I really got to work on that. It isn't like the United States.
And I can say that America is a continent, but I know you Americans love to say that America is just the US.
I'm like, I'm working on it. I usually catch myself at that time. I just said America. I'm like, nope. And so it's true. It's like in America, there I go again. United States, the European colonizers committed genocide against the Native Americans there, and did some fucking shady shit to Mexico, stealing Texas and California and New Zealand and New Mexico and Arizona. Those states there and Nevada, I think, those were stolen essentially. It's some shady shit. Again, another link to a YouTube video to show you the history of that. But point is, wiped out. Now the only most Native Americans are in like reservations, and it's like there wasn't as much integration and assimilation as in Mexico, because in Mexico it's very much it's much more mixed. It's not a box of chocolates in Mexico. it's a cake batter. So it's you have to take that into consideration in the differences in the country's history. So it's like, oh, look at that, and Mexico is also legally called the United States. Yeah, the United. Yeah, you see, girl.
Like United States of Mexico.
Yeah.
Really?
Or actually, it would translate to Mexican United States. That's the official name. Yeah, it doesn't make me happy, but yeah.
It'd be the United States of. Well, girl.
United States, yeah.
Girl, that just makes you think like United States of Mexico. No way, it's because we were saying United States of America, the continent. So wouldn't Mexico also be United States of America?
No, don't go there, please.
Sip on that tea. Sip on that tea. We are ready for that conversation. Let's get into it. So, I'm just kidding. No.
Closing.
No, we gotta shut this down. We're going. There's so much more. There's so much more. Like Anneke was saying, so many different topics that it branches out into, and it comes from and stems into it. We gotta stay focused. I think, was this a mistake? Should we have started with like the cultural history of and the colonization of our different countries, of our heritages?
No, because that is a 6-hour topic, and we are not cultural.
Hey, there's our next 5 rounds right there.
Yours is a Taro channel.
Girl, it's all the underlying things, though. Girl. You really can't just say it's not surface level.
Just really quickly before I forget, right? This thing that I'm using, that we're wearing here, this is Maori. That's Maori, carved by Maori people. It's a Maori traditional carving. It's a Maori traditional motif. It's bone carving. Hector was asking whether it's sewn on my chest clothing or whether it's a pendant. So I wear it for a reason. And that one there, I think I bought in the US. And I think the artist is not Native American, I don't think. But I believe it is made in the tradition. I have no idea. You tell me, those who are, so is this my heritage? No. But I bought this from a Maori seller. Again, carved by Maori, sold by Maori, and bought, and with their blessing, worn with their blessing. Like the haka, I've mentioned this to a few people. The Maori haka, the All Blacks, which is a rugby team, a new rugby team. I think we're one of the few top in the world now, and has been for 100 years, I think. They would do the haka, and you have this old from 1908, 1901, early 1900s, people performing the haka, not as well as they do now. You see these people who are trying to do the haka, and it's a little bit funny to watch. And the haka is performed by a lot of people here, no matter what your skin color may be. And is that appropriation? I don't think that is. In the New Zealand context, it is not seen as appropriation. Yet it is the adoption of someone's cultural artifact by another or a few other cultural groups. And so my own heritage, the Peranakan heritage, is a mixture of Javanese and Chinese. And the one thing in common, though, in contrasting with, say, the Santa Muerte, I don't know about the Kuan Yin Oracle, I'm not sure. But in these examples, none of them were stripping anybody. None of them were taking something and then kicking the cultural actor who initially owned the artifact. And then it's like robbery, you know? So instead of robbery, instead of being forced, instead of taking someone else's cultural artifact, the adoption and assimilation and appreciation of other cultures seems to be distinguished by the absence of such forceful, like not so consensual adoption of a culture. I don't know if I'm making any sense at the moment, but yeah. So I'm just contrasting the stories that you guys are telling me just now with how the Maori culture has been adopted by New Zealanders as a symbol of their identity as New Zealanders. And not all of us are Maori.
It reminds me, you sent me a link once in the chat, Anneke, to one of Mexica Hearts, Corazon Mexica's listings. He advertised it on Instagram. It was like a necklace of some sort, and it was like handmade, a clay molded, little necklace of with his design that's of the Aztec Mexica tradition, in that style there. And she said, is this cultural appropriation? And I said, well, no, because if she were to buy it and to wear it, would that be cultural appropriation? And I said, well, no, because it's once he's advertising it and selling it to the masses. If he didn't want this to be worn by the public, he wouldn't have put it out there, or he would have specified solely like this is only for these types of things. And it's like he also makes regalia and costumes, for lack of a better word, I can't think of one at the moment, for rituals and ceremonies that are for that. He wouldn't sell those. He wouldn't put those up for the public to sell and to buy and to wear, So it's very different. Those would be specifically for that would be that she would be supporting diversity and supporting a creator. So yeah.
So that's where the consent, I know I come from the forensic psychology, sexual violence type of lingo, maybe, or mindset, maybe. This idea of consensual, is it with consent or not? It's a bit like an intimate partner relationship. The abuse and aggression happen not when physical aggression happen, because physically aggressive intimate relationship can be consensual. So then physical aggressive intimate relationship alone isn't sufficient to define violence or assault, but the consent and the power play, the power dynamic where one person impose their will upon another, that's where the trouble happens, right? So I see appropriation similarly like that, where somebody is being forced to, you know what I mean? Like somebody else's cultural artifact is taken and then sort of turned into something else without necessarily considering where the artifact is coming from. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just the adoption of it. So like the Kuan Yin Oracle, like cultural actors such as wives seem to have no problem with it, right? So, and yet I have a problem with it. like I look at it and I'm outraged. I'm thinking like, what on earth are you doing here? You know, like this is nonsense, right? So yeah, I'm still struggling with that actually.
Which I think this is the beauty of this particular Tarottube and tea. We all have different opinion. We literally all have different opinion, and we kind of always remind ourselves the purpose of this series or this chat is to talk it out, and then while providing a safe space for everyone to kind of chime in and just kind of open up our minds, like we don't need to be on one lane. No, this is appropriation. Burn that deck. Or we can just say, it is what it is, right? We choose what we support. But then we also have to be careful of how you spend your money.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You'll close. Okay. My personal take is like when it comes to be your culture, and this goes like past your DNA, past your skin tone, like what you consider your culture, and this will be different, because where you were raised, like what you have experienced throughout your life. Like when it comes to cultural appropriation, in particular for tarot decks, I would say like do what feels comfortable to you. For example, why feels comfortable working with the Kuan Yin Oracle, and that's absolutely perfectly fine. And Anneke doesn't feel comfortable with that, and that is also absolutely perfectly fine. And we have the two perspectives. So when it comes to decks that represent the Mexican culture, I feel very, very comfortable saying yes or no. Like I don't have any issues there. And then when it comes to other cultures, I think that's when I'm saying like be willing to listen, and to compromise. If I feel like, I don't know, if I would feel iffy, about the Kuan Yin Oracle, then I would go to someone, like why, and say like, hey, like, do you think this deck, like, what's your opinion? And then hearing, the different perspectives, I think that's how I can make my mind up and to decide like, okay, so maybe I want to approach the culture like this, but now I'm aware of it, I'm conscious about it, that there is that layer, of someone who is not like an inherent part of the culture is depicting it. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but at least I know that, so that can be in my mind when I work with that deck. That's my take.
And there we have it. I think that's it. We're at our time limit now. Trying to keep these short.
Yes. We want to keep it around like an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 max. So I'm taking over because I'm bossy. The next chat on, I know I'm so bossy. I'm taking over his channel. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad. Everyone has show up for this chat, and we have. Hopefully, continue to talk about cultural appropriation on your own channel. Talk to your friends. Do a VR, whatever you want to do. By all means, please do so. We haven't tackled all the decks we want to tackle, but it is what it is. We'll do that on a separate time. On our next time for the hashtag Tarottube and tea, it'll be on my channel. Thank you so much, on Anneke Tarot. And through today, cultural appropriation, we're going to move into diversity. Ooh, girl. The tea is going to be so hot next time. From cultural appropriation, we'll move into diversity, and we'll talk about representation, diversity in the tarot community, in the tarot culture, in the tarot deck, production, all those good stuff. Hopefully we'll squeeze everything in with an hour and 15 minutes. And should we do a card? We should do a card. We always do a card. We cannot not do a card. Should I use this deck? Oh no, horrible. Oh, you do have that. I do have this deck too.
I feel like it's a tough, like,
You two look so cute with the same deck.
I mean, this is a Chinese tarot done by somebody in Italy in the 1800s, and it's caricaturish.
Yep.
It's very caricaturish.
It's a good example. It's another good example. It's like this. I feel like we should revisit this topic again later, because like and show more specific. Like maybe pick like 2 decks, and then like and then see which is and which isn't, because it's like they were talking. I don't know who it was. Something about like reparations and all that. And I'm like, Brady Tarot could also be discussed as well, because of the Native American things in there. But she has donated a percentage of the proceeds of this deck to the Native American projects and charities and all that with this deck. So there's that. But could she have done more? And does that just make it okay for everyone to go free range? And it's like that. This brings up a whole nother round of questions. We need to pick a card and all that. And it's like,
And all,
go.
and whether what if I donate, it's okay? I mean, if I throw money to the people of the culture, that's not. I mean, I'm not saying she is or she's not. Whatever. I don't think she is. But we talk about a lot of qualifiers today. If this is not appropriation, if that it's appropriation, right? Yeah, so obviously there are qualifiers, and I think and I think that's basically, what is that? Is that? Oh, okay, no, it's nothing to do with our topic. Sorry, I got distracted. But I suddenly remember what I wanted to say that I forgot. But I think it's best addressed in the diversity topic.
Write it down.
Should I do Tarot Musantara or should I do this Italian Chinese tarot?
Yes,
whichever you prefer.
The Kuan Yin.
I'm gonna use the Sasarai Vito tarot.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna use a deck that does like a weird thing as to like really breaks down like, the deck. This deck right here, Marielle, really does break down away from it. It does something weird. Maybe it's because I love the Marielle too much. Maybe I'm biased. But to me, it's like it talks about the archetypes. And this goes into how the archetypes are shown in the deck. And, it brings up a whole nother thing on appropriation of talking about the archetypes in tarot. And, where you have Delphi, and then you have, I'm trying to think of another one. And then you have like maybe Roots of Asia, maybe. And then you have a bunch of other decks, just like, focus on a certain culture. And we see how these cultures are. They were talking about like Gaviota Cosmica mentioned like Isis, the goddess Isis. And I'm like, well, it's like the archetype of Isis is like in like so many different cultures. And it's like, how do you know which is, it goes, that's another topic. And whether it's like someone uses it as a defense or a deflector, I was like, oh no, it's not. It's just how the archetype presented itself. And it's like,
All right.
So let's pick a card.
Which is why that qualifier is important. Like, in order for us to judge whether something I feel whether something is appropriative or not, those qualifiers should go beyond you look like that and therefore it's okay for you to do this. Because my look has nothing to do with my culture or cultural knowledge or something.
All right. Do you have a card?
Not yet. I was too busy talking about archetypes. Okay, what's the card for today? The Hierophant. Kind of fitting. Traditions and the establishment and the higher powers and the religious and spiritual practices, honestly. And it's kind of like, I was thinking about this as well, again, in the background that I forget to mention. It's like with tarot, it's like a lot of people integrate it into a spiritual practice. And so it's like when you want to, and it's like converting religions, really. The dominant religion is Christianity in America. Well, yeah, in America. But there's this growing interest in different spiritual practice and religions, So, I guess it's a very fitting card that kind of like another aspect of appropriation we didn't cover, but it's like, yeah, you can practice shamanism and all that, no matter your, ethnicity or your race, if we want to use that word. So, who's next?
I'll go next. Yeah, I think just to say that if you come from a place of respect and passion, to me that's totally okay. And I mentioned passion because I got the 3 of Wands. And I think this speaks to us being right on the edge of the river and just starting to look at like how vast the river is and how long the journey is, just starting to dive or like to barely get our fingers wet into the whole of these topics that we're covering, into appropriation, into the whole of that. I think it's a wonderful and beautiful part of tarot, and also like the different perspectives coming together, illuminated by like a fire. I forgot the word for that. When you do a campfire. Anyhow, a fogata. I'm gonna say in Spanish. When you make a fogata. And you have the people gathering and sharing their stories. And I love this about our chats because it's a group of people sharing stories.
I feel like I have to go next because I don't want to close with the Kuan Yin Oracle in a way. I mean, it is what it is. But I got the Mother Fears, which this depiction is very accurate, with the many hands, with the fire, with the look in her eyes being centered. But remember the passions, and you have choices that you can make, and all those choices are all within you. Yeah. And I'm looking at the book at all. I am just digging through my own knowledge of Kuan Yin. And with this depiction, she is so resourceful, right? She can save all lives. She has compassion for all lives. Every single one of the hands is holding some kind of remedy for who are in need. So you have that power too. Not saying that you have to save, everyone, but if you try, you are there.
I have been having trouble reading just one card, so I'm going to do how I usually do. I pull 3 and then I read them together. This is using the Oriental Tarot, which is not the most politically correct name. Tarocchi Orientali, by somebody in the 1800s in Italy, somewhere in Turin. And so the Justice, Tower, and Judgment. I think it's very, how should I put it? You need to dissect things, even though it means that you are going to completely have to be faced with having to revamp how you see the world, how you perceive the world, see the reality have to change. And that is the only way for us to, sorry, my direction is very confusing. That is the only way for us to open up a new world for ourselves. When we completely destroy the old, we can see the new. That's the only way. Tower, Judgment, and here is Justice. And for me, justice is, it is so and it is right. And so our conversation, I think, is quite even-handed, quite appropriate. It is exactly what we all need at the moment, no more, no less. It is going to perhaps force us to see things in a very different way, but it is the only way. It is the only way for us to be able to open our eyes up, into a new reality, which is a better one, I think. So, yeah.
All right, so there we go. Thank you everyone for stopping by. If you guys are new to this channel or you guys don't know Lucy AcquaLuna or On the Cusp Tarot Y or Anneke from Nobody Here, go check out their channels. Go check out Anneke's Instagram, My Collection for Sale. And yeah, we will see you all in the next live stream, which will be on Y's channel, On the Cusp Tarot, which will be there will be an announcement somewhere.
Yeah, there will be. I'm one of the prepare everything like beautiful and clickable and everything like jazzy and all those good stuff.
Not me. So, thank you everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below with your ideas, or better yet, if you have a YouTube channel, video response. Give your 2 cents. You know, I hate saying this, but it's true. Start a conversation. Give us a response. You know, and give us your ideas as to like what is appropriation in tarot and oracle versus what isn't. What are you okay with? What are you not okay with? What are your thoughts on it? And let's just say this right now, and I should have said this earlier, you know, but we are not the experts on this topic. We are not. Even though I feel like, you know, even though I feel like I have to be right and that I am right and my opinion is right. No. Okay. Do your own research. Go to the correct sources. I'm gonna try and link books and sources to other on this topic. Yeah, there you go. That's it. All right. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.